Okay. If you would not like to be in the recording, please do turn your video off. Totally fine to do so. Great. All right, let me get us started. Like I said, my name is Shanti Matthew. I'm the Managing Director of PPL, and we are here today to talk about a senior design research fellowship that we have available on our team. So a few things we'll do here today in our time together. We'll certainly start with some introductions. We have a bunch of PPL team members here today, and so I want to make sure that you all get a chance to say hello to them. They say hello to you. I'll tell you a little bit about PPL as an organization. We'll talk a bit about the role that we are recruiting for, the application timeline, but then we'll spend the bulk of our time together going through questions. So FAQs, so a Q&A portion, FAQs that we get frequently from folks who apply to work with us. And then we'll also have time to take your questions live. So please do utilize the chat function. Our team is poised and ready to chat with you in the chat window. And we will use the chat function as a way to take your questions live. So please do put questions in there, thoughts, comments. We'll respond as we go. And also Nia, who you'll meet in a moment, will call out your questions, read some of your questions out loud. So please do upvote questions as well. You can +1 someone else's questions so that we can know the really hot topics that we should address. How does that sound? Bunch of people who are muted. Okay, great.
Can I just ask you real quick? Sorry.
Yeah.
Is there a specific time that you want us to add questions, or can it just be kind of rolling?
You can start your questions right now, Lucas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And we will. So like I said, the team will get answer things as we go, but we'll also make sure if they're upvoting or +1ing other people's questions is really helpful, because then we know to make sure to call those out and verbally answer them as well at the end. But feel free to get going. Thank you for asking. Other questions that I can answer before we get started? No? Okay, great, cool. Well, let me start with introductions of the team. You've already met me twice, so we'll move right along. Nia, can I pass to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll just have the PPLers introduce ourselves, and then we'll keep rolling. We unfortunately don't have time, I think, to go around to everyone.
Sure, thanks, Shanti. So I'm Mia Holtenoff, and I am a research associate at Public Policy Lab, and I'm also a recent graduate. I just graduated 2 weeks ago, but I started at PPL as an intern this past September, and thus I'm transitioning now into my full-time role as
can we please all, Nia, do you have power to just mute everyone? And then we can just each come off mute. Perfect. Okay, great. Talia, do you want to go next? I didn't hear who you called, Nia, so I'm going to pick Talia.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shanti. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia or Talia Rediwal. I'm PPL's Research and Evaluation Director. So would be working closely with whomever ends up being our Senior Design Research Fellow. Next up, I think Erica, you're on the line too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Lindsay, Senior Research Lead at Public Policy Lab. So good to see all of your faces, and looking forward to talking more about this position with you all.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Cisse. I'm also a Design Research Associate at PPL. And like Erica mentioned, I'm excited to meet you all and see you all today. Antonia?
Thank you, Cisse. I'm Antonia, or Auntie. I am the Design Fellow at the Public Policy Lab. I started last October, and in June, I'm transitioning into a full-time design job at the PPL.
Thank you. Any other PPLers hiding? Who I've missed? No. Okay, great. Cool. Thanks to everyone else. I am going to hopefully take note of many of your names from your little boxes. I'm really glad you're here. So first up, we did that. Let me tell you a bit about Public Policy Lab to get us started. So as far as we know, Public Policy Lab was the first nonprofit policy design lab for the public sector in the United States. We were founded 10 years ago. This is actually our 10th anniversary year, so we're excited and proud about that. And you can expect lots of 10th anniversary content this year, which is fun. We partner with government agencies and nonprofit organizations that have a public interest mission. And we work at the, what we think of as like both ends of the spectrum, from the policy end of the spectrum, that's really upstream and strategic and about rules, regulations, big P policy and little p policy. We also work all the way at the other end, at the service delivery end of the spectrum. So with frontline providers, with frontline staff who are delivering public services with and for members of the public. And we are a nonprofit because we have a focus on low income and marginalized communities. That doesn't mean that we only work on what would like be traditionally thought of as welfare programs or anti-poverty programs, but we are super glad and we are basically on mission to work with government agencies in particular who have a mandate to serve a disproportionately disadvantaged population. Obviously, lots of info about this on our website. Quick note to say that in terms of our methods, there are 4 sort of big values that we hold. And one is that we're human-centered. So for us, that means with any system that we're working in, whether it's homeless services or mental health access or veterans affairs, education services, we want to start with the question of who are all the humans who are involved. And we don't only want to go find those humans and, you know, sort of glean knowledge from them or have them look at stuff that we've made, but the goal is actually to be co-creative, to co-design together. We are a design forward organization, and so everything we do in a material and iterative way. As a sort of design essence organization, we believe there's real power in not just having conversation or ideas of systems or knowledge be ephemeral, but to actually put them down and visualize them, and to do that over and over again, because our assumption is that when we have something concrete or physical, we can actually look at it together, and then folks could say, yeah, it's like that, or, oh, I had no idea that that's what you did with that form when it got to your office. And we're iterative because we assume that in the giant complex systems that we work in, we're going to be mostly wrong the first time we try to visualize a system or understand it or make change in it. And we want, in the spirit of co-creation, to be able to make things over and over again so we can together get closer and closer to what is accurate. Time-based and holistic means that we want to design not for what we think of as one touch point or one moment in a system or one interaction that members of the public have with a public service system, but we want to design a whole bunch of series of interactions together. So we are humans, we live in bodies, we experience time in a only moving forward way. And so from the moment of getting your notification that your driver's license is expired, to booking an appointment online at the DMV, if you can do that, to walking in the door, to standing in a line, to being handed a form. We think that we should actually design all of those interactions together, which becomes pretty complicated when you start to realize that a lot of those, what we think of as journeys that the members of the public go through when using public services, are not necessarily sort of owned and operated by one office in a government agency, let alone even one department or one agency. So you'll see that we do a lot of sort of cross-agency work because of that. Holistic means that we want to design for multiple channels. And so all those interactions that I just described, some of them are in person, some of them are, through a digital interface, some of them is a hard copy thing. And we want to be using all sorts of medium as we design for all those different touch points. In terms of skill sets on our team, all our staff fall into 3 main capabilities. So one is research, which we're going to talk about today. And you probably noticed that we have a lot of our research team here to answer your questions. Researchers tend to be human researchers, qualitative researchers. We certainly do quantitative work, but we'll hear more about that today. we have a design team, and those tend to be visual designers, so graphic designers, communication designers, folks like that. They're really in charge of owning the making of what we do. And then we do have strategists. So these tend to be policy folks, they tend to be business or operational folks who are really thinking about sort of how is this going to work, and what's the 30,000-foot view, and where is the money coming from, and how is this actually going to function for the government agency who needs to own it. Okay. Normally this is when I would say any questions, but I'm seeing that things are going into the chat. So hopefully PPLers are responding to you as well as we speak. So the Senior Design Research Fellow, let me talk about this role a bit. So first thing to say is that there is a big long job description on our website. So please do read that and look at that closely. Very high level, what I'll say here, since all of it is in writing elsewhere, is that we are looking for a Senior Design Research Fellow that would come and join us for, maybe it's an 11-month fellowship this time. And this would be someone who is a professional design researcher. And because it's a senior role, we're looking for someone with at least 6 years of work experience, preferably related to human-centered design method, agency, type of work, et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk more about work experience later in the info session. Background and interest in using design research methods, particularly ethnographic methods. I know that Talia, our research director, is going to speak more specifically to methods that we use and what we mean by design research here. And then, of course, an ability to work with a broad range of partners in a variety of communities. So a thing about working at PPL is that as I've sort of said, we work all over the system. And so that means that we walk into City Hall, and we walk into the New York City Municipal Administrative Building, and we also walk into homeless shelters, and we walk into public schools in low-income neighborhoods. And folks who work at PPL have to be sort of confident and competent and sort of compassionate in all of those circumstances. So that's something that we look for. And so someone who would come into a Senior Design Research Fellowship role with us, we are hoping or expecting that you come with experience sort of bridging being able to interact in different types of communities. Okay. In terms of timeline, we're doing a pretty quick application process for us this time. So applications are due, I believe it's this Friday at 5 p.m. We will reach out to selected candidates for Zoom interviews in the next, to be conducted in the next couple weeks. And then we're hoping to make offers the week of June 14th with a start date in early July. But we can also, can talk about that with the selected candidates. Again, lots more info on the website. Okay, I said a whole bunch of things. PPL team, anything you want to add to that before I jump into our formal Q&A portion? I'm going to sip on my iced tea for a moment.
I think, Shanti, a lot of questions that came up just now are going to be addressed in the Q&A, so we might as well just dive right in and give people time to address extra questions later on.
Okie doke, perfect. Okay. So the way that we like to do our info sessions is that we'll start with FAQs. So we have got some questions lined up. PPL staff will take those, and then we will have time for live Q&A. And so Nia, you can be looking at those questions and getting us set up to answer some questions that you have live. Okay, first up, what does a typical day as a fellow or a PPL staff person look like? I think Cisse, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I can take this one. So a typical day, I mean, there really is no typical day per se, but things we can expect to do as a research fellow include coordinating research activities, preparing for partner meetings and calls. You also might be drafting and creating our research plan, research questions. You also might be engaged in testing prototypes and leading those interviews. And also, you might also be involved in thinking about how we are evaluating the project and things that go into that. And there are also things that are not research related that are also part of your day. So every day we have a daily stand-up call, which we call Plum. And that's an opportunity to share with the broader team like what you're working on for the day. And we also share like fun facts with each other during that time. they also have like bi-weekly org calls, and we call those planning. That's an opportunity to hear what's going on at the organizational level, and also learn about other projects that are in development and projects that are also going on.
Great, thank you. PPL, anything to add to that? I thought that was fabulous and thorough. No? All right. Okie doke. Talia, I'm not a design researcher per se. Could I still be a good fit for this role?
Thank you, Shanti. Yes, we are aware that probably most of you are coming from different backgrounds, different skills. Most of us at PPL haven't had a linear pathway into our defined job descriptions and roles as well. And so we know that very likely we have designers on the call that might have a lot of research experience. There might be social researchers or social scientists who have done a lot of applied research, but not really worked in design. There might even be other professionals who've worked a lot in low-income communities and worked a lot in environments where there's a lot of poverty and trauma, and have a lot to share in terms of working ethically in those circumstances, and have a lot of like domain knowledge, which is really important. And so we know that it's pretty common that there isn't like the perfect fit when it comes to this kind of role. And so there's certain things that we're looking for and screening for as we're going through all of the applications. And it's a combination of someone's mindset and experience when it comes to conducting research ethically and doing projects ethically, especially when working with low-income communities where trauma is a big issue, poverty is a big issue. And then there are certain skill sets that we would also be looking for. So with that comes, you know, a sense of rigor, the ability to think critically, to work in teams. Applied research experience is great. Participatory work is great. Strong writing skills are really important, having a high attention to detail, and also being really adaptive, because things can change on the fly, like pandemics might happen when you least expect it. Some of the skills that would be great to talk to if you have had this experience is, we mentioned this in the description as well, but you know, your experience with research planning, so scoping a study, defining a methodology, using various applied research or design research methods, especially coming from anthropology, ethnography. You know, analyzing data and doing things like concept and prototype testing and development. If you've had any experience running pilots or anything like that, that would be great. And then on the other hand, we expect that the fellow will also be in the thick of it, facilitating workshops with our clients, reporting, presenting, that kind of thing as well. So sort of client management, client-facing work, leading teams, anything like that would be also really helpful for us to know. So we know it's not the perfect fit. So sort of looking for a combination of experience and aptitude. And we understand that, you know, we're happy to provide mentorship to fill any gaps as well. In terms of what mentorship can mean, you have access to me, of course. I'm always there to support any researchers or designers and strategists in our team with any research skills. And what that means is we have like a research practice bi-weekly, where we sit and share challenges and help our research practice at PPL grow as well. So do a bit of org strategy. These are the great craft calls. We also have a research dedicated Slack channel, which people put things on, events, papers, things of interest, questions as well. But, you know, we can sort of work that out as we go. So hope that answers that question. So please don't run away if you're like, I'm not a design researcher. We can find ways to accommodate people, just depending on what combination of skills and aptitude and backgrounds that you have.
Lovely. Thanks, Talia. Oh, get over here. All right, Erica Lindsay. What is the level of experience that someone would need to be a senior fellow here?
Yes. So as Shanti mentioned, we're looking for someone that has at least 6 years experience in the role. Talia spoke a bit to the type of work that you would be doing in this role in terms of the type of research methods that you would be using. And so I just want to emphasize, you should have experience leading projects. So this will be a part of being a senior research fellow, also includes a project lead role as well. And so being well versed in creating and executing research plans, some of the other tasks that Talia mentioned, but just also like emphasizing that you will also be working with like diverse stakeholders, like Shanti mentioned, and be able to communicate research findings to multiple stakeholders, and helping work closely with our clients, who we call project partners as well. Oh, and this is also me. Hi.
So I'm like trying to unmute myself.
This is also me. I'm switching careers. Would this be a good fit? I've seen like some of the questions, or if your experience like maps onto the experience that we are looking for, then yes, I'm someone that switched from urban planning to research, and like Talia mentioned, there is mentorship here and support, and so there's room to like grow into this space to sharpen those skills. But it is important that you have research experience and have the years of professional experience to be able to be successful in this role.
Awesome. Nia, do we need to be in New York City to apply to this role?
Yes, so this is very exciting to say that we are slowly going back into the office. So we're hoping to operate in the coming weeks and months with the kind of hybrid work model, meaning we'll be working from home Sundays and going into the office on 2 days a week, namely Tuesdays and Thursdays. So short answer is yes, you need to be in New York City to apply for the position.
So many screens and monitors. Thank you, Nia. I'm practicing. See, it's Tuesday. I'm in our office. Talia, what type of work counts towards my work experience?
Oh, was I taking this one? I thought somebody else was.
I've got you, but I can make things
all right. Maybe I'm answering questions. My mind was in the chat, so perhaps if you can grab this one, that would be great.
Yeah. So work experience, we are looking for like, for us, that tends to mean like work in a professional setting. We love education, and we love higher education credentials, but work experience for us tends to mean that you have worked on a professional team. So it's not including time in school. But that being said, if you want to talk me into some other perspective, that's totally fine. You're welcome to do it. But work experience, because we're recruiting for a senior fellow in this round of recruiting, like Erica said, we are looking for someone who has experience interacting with partners or clients, diverse stakeholders. So we are looking for sort of more years of professional experience that we would be in a more mid-level or junior role. In terms of, I guess I should say this, and I think Talia spoke to this a bit earlier. I don't think that 6 years of work experience needs to mean that you were like 6 years at a design agency, or you were 6 years at a desk in an office like this one. Work experience generally just means sort of not in school time. So if you want to come tell me about this super amazing grassroots advocacy frontline service work that you did, I would love to hear about it. And we absolutely will count that. Okie doke. Nia, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to talk about visa? Do you accept applicants who are on an OPT or other work visa?
Yeah, so I saw some other people asking this in the chat as well. We are more than willing to accept people who currently are on some sort of work visa, but we're not able to sponsor the visa for this role at the moment. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Shanti?
Nope. Accurate. Thank you. Okay. Do you have, this is for me, Shanti, do you have any advice to me for applying to work at PPL? I think the biggest thing I would say is we try to keep our sort of initial application or screener or expression of interest light, because we don't want to make it a huge barrier to talk to us or to apply to work with us. So we've said a bunch of things, and we will continue to say a bunch of things as we continue to answer your questions today. But if you're interested in working with us and you are, I don't know, interested and curious and passionate and have some relevant skills, then we would be so glad to hear from you. So if you're like, oh my gosh, Talia and Erica, whoever, rattled off like 27 things that we would love to have, and I have like 3 of them, or I have like 12 of them, you can still give it a shot. So we're never mad about hearing from people who are interested in the type of work that we do. So I think that's the thing that I would say. Other people on our team, I guess I have one more, I probably have one more thing, but other people on PPL team, do you want to share any bits of advice that you have about applying to work with us? How'd you score this really good gig?
I would say one thing is we look just not as at who you are a person, but how you put your application together. It's really important. We are a design agency and we do have a high attention to detail. So just checking things like spelling mistakes and grammatical errors and making sure everything looks and feels nice. It seems obvious, but you would be surprised how often those things aren't done. And we look at those things really, really closely in terms of trying to work out how professional someone will be. So there's a little bit of insider tips about how we screen people.
The other thing that I would add is we do ask, why you're interested in working in public services with an organization like PPL. And that's not just a sort of check the box, throwaway question. We really are interested. We think and we know that what we do is pretty niche. We're a pretty small team. So that's your opportunity to tell us about your life experience, about your motivations to do this type of work, about why PPL in particular. And we read those and we really find them interesting and compelling and really care about them. I hope that you will get the sense from our conversation today, but we really are we're like a very human workplace. And especially as someone who does more of the business side of things here at PPL and does a lot of hiring, I'm looking for like real life humans who are going to show up in their humanity with their values, with their experiences, with their thoughts and opinions, and who's going to sort of like bring a different perspective or bring themselves to this team, right? Like, we are the humans who make, like the humans are this organization. So please do come at us with your stories and your real reasons for working here, because it is something that we care about quite a bit. Okay. That's also your opportunity to say I've got this type of experience. I don't have that type of experience. Here's what I do bring. Right? Like all of that is welcome. Feel free to tell us about who you are, and we would love to know. Okie doke. I think that's our last FAQ. How are we doing in the chat?
There are a lot of questions in the chat.
Okay, good. We've got 25 minutes left. So
there are more questions in the chat than we have been able to get to.
Okay, now's the time.
I think that we've been doing a pretty good job of answering as they come, but one question that was asked earlier on that was spoken to a little bit, but I'm wondering if anyone wants to speak to a bit more, is how much does the fellow get to contribute to the research design / plan, and kind of related, who are the types of people that are working on these teams? Does anyone want to take that?
I can jump in. So I might try and combine a few other responses to other questions I've seen. I hope I'm sort of cherry picking and getting lost in the thread because so much has come up, but I'll do my best. So on every team at PPL is at minimum a researcher, a designer, and a strategist. And we collaborate really closely, and everybody, maybe with the exception of the designers a bit, but everybody does a bit of everybody's jobs in some way. But we know that a lot of people don't have the sharp design skills you need to create some of the prototypes or something that we're doing. So everybody will be doing a bit of research, but you as the senior fellow, we hope would be able to scope out a research plan, depending on what projects are coming up and your level of experience handling clients, running projects, managing teams. You may also be scoping out the project too. That said, all of this happens under the support of all of our directors. And so we do have every week, there is a set of meetings for every project, in which it's almost like an internal crit, which focuses on various aspects of the project, like its strategy, the products that are being made. And those meetings are basically a meeting with each director to ensure that things are running on track and the best quality that they possibly can be. So we'd hope that this person certainly would be able to independently scope research and design a research plan, but that would also be with support and oversight. And great if you're confident also of scoping out a whole project. That would be really helpful. I think I answered that question. Anybody else got anything else to add to that?
Nia, do we have more questions from the chat that we want to highlight?
Yeah, just want to make sure we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
So another question we had was, what kinds of projects should we share to demonstrate our aptitude for leading projects if we don't have a portfolio to share just yet?
I could take this and folks can jump in. So I feel like demonstrating projects that you've led, sharing research. I think I saw someone else talking about other types of research that they've conducted, and being able to demonstrate the decision-making processes around, like when decision points were made in the project, research experience, and yeah, and when I say decision, I mean like to demonstrate like strategy, strategic decision making. I'm trying to think of what else might be helpful. I would say those are like some of the main things to highlight. Folks have other stuff they want to add to it to be included. Okay.
Great. And then another question we have is about the role specifically, kind of why it's open, why it's a year-long fellowship as opposed to a more permanent role. Shanti, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I sure can. So a totally good and fair question. And I'm scanning through the chat now finally and seeing that there are some similar questions in here. So typically, well, let me start here. The role or the reason that we've recruited for fellows or offered fellowships has sort of changed over the year as our organizational model or staffing model has changed. But we still find that fellowships are a great way to bring on folks when we have a sort of specific set of needs as it relates to certainly our staff, but also projects that are coming up. Like fellows have been a great way to say, oh, we have like criminal justice work coming up. Can we bring someone onto our team who is, a professional who's been working in this field and is going to bring some experience that we don't have on our team currently. So we are, what we have continued to find is that if you are just dialing in, please do mute yourself. Thank you. We're glad you're here. So we are looking for a fellow in this situation because we find that fellows are still great ways to bring on new people with specific skill sets or experience that we need. Also, frankly, we are a small team. And so by offering positions that are on sort of time basis, we're able to give people the opportunity to work with us who maybe are, like one of the questions earlier was like, you have some experience, we haven't worked in the public sector yet, or you have public sector experience, you haven't worked in a design context before. So it allows for some opportunity to learn and to pivot for the folks who are fellows. It also offers PPL a chance, like the fellow and PPL, a chance to work together in a time-bounded way. Because yes, to answer one of the other explicit questions that was asked, certainly fellows have transitioned onto full-time staff. You're looking at some of them here. So Erica was a fellow, Talia was a fellow, Auntie, as she shared, is a fellow currently who's coming on staff. Not every single fellow has come on staff with us after the duration of their fellowship. And sometimes that's sort of like the beauty of it, I will say. So fellows certainly have come on staff and gives everyone a chance to see how we like working together. And lots of times fellows have gone on their way to do really amazing things. So you can see our network of fellows on our website. But a lot of times folks have other adventures that they want to go on and things that they're working on. So does that get, hopefully that, I said a bunch of things, hopefully that gets at a few of the questions that were in there.
That felt very thorough. I think another question we have is about the co-working culture at PPL. And I would expand that to just say the general working culture and how we collaborate, if anyone wants to take that.
I can start, and I'm sure we can share it around because we like to collaborate. We're all a very friendly, kind, good-hearted bunch of people. I feel like it's one of the real highlights working at PPL. The work is hard, you know, there's a lot of it. We work to a really high standard and we expect a lot of ourselves and try and drive a lot of what we can forward. And it would be enormously challenging if it wasn't for the humans that I'm working side by side with to make all of that happen. So yeah, there's a lot of care. We watch out for each other a lot. You know, when we feel like someone's working too hard, we go tell them to take a break, or if someone's sick, you know, we working remotely on this past year and a bit, where we use Slack as our main collaboration platform. So it's like littered with all kinds of messages to each other and, you know, friendliness and stuff that's happening in lieu of actually being with one another in person. So I'd say we've got a pretty strong and healthy culture that way. And we're actually, no one's really asked this yet, but we are transitioning to working in person, partial in person in the office in sort of the coming month or so. Not sure where things will be when this fellowship starts. It may change again, we don't know, but we're all very excited to be seeing one another physically. And we have a great rooftop as well, which we're looking forward to making the most of. If anybody else wants to jump in and say anything about what it's like to be a PPL human being.
I will just add, because someone asked, I am very impressed at the number of questions in the chat. So if we like sound distracted, it's because we're also trying to respond to your questions. Someone asked about like what has been one of the highlights and like what has like been a challenging experience. And so in terms of highlights, I would just share that Shanti mentioned this, but the people that are part of the team at PPL are amazing. People are extremely, when Shanti's asking you to like share your values and what you want to learn and bring your whole self, it results in a work environment that is extremely collaborative, very supportive, and just a really great group of people that support each other. And so one of the best experiences of the like fellowship and then staff has been that. And then challenging experience, I know this feels like a silly pandemic really shook things up in terms of how we are able to, a lot of our work is us meeting people where they are. So if they're in shelter or if they are in a school, we go there. And so just transitioning to being as human-centered as possible, but meeting people remotely. So it's like a two-for, answered another question and followed up on Talia's.
I'd also add to that when we speak about our ability to collaborate and that we emphasize that in a large way, it's not just that we're all kind of contributing these small things, but some people are contributing a lot more than others, there's really a sense of everyone has equal value to add to projects. And I think part of that comes from the fact that each project team has people with all sorts of diverse backgrounds. Like we mentioned, there's always at least one designer, one researcher, one strategist. And so I think, especially for me coming in, who maybe had a bit less experience than some other of the folks I was working with, I really felt like, wow, people value what I have to say and what I have to contribute. So I think that that's a big part of the collaborative culture, is just everyone feeling like they really do have something valuable to contribute to the team. And if no one else wants to add to that.
Nice. Can I answer a quick question here about portfolios? I'm seeing a lot of portfolio chatter in the chat. This may be just a slip of our team's tongue, but do not worry about submitting a portfolio. The field is not missing from the form, so do not fear. We often have a portfolio submission opportunity in our applications, which is why we may be speaking to it. But because this is a design research role, we have not requested that in the initial application. However, selected candidates will be asked to submit a work sample. This is not a new assignment. It will be, please show us something that you have already done. Just so we can get a sense of your work, but there's no need for everyone to do that up front.
Great. And another question we have is kind of about PPL's relationship to public policy specifically. So someone asked, are there tangible opportunities for projects to shape public policy? And has PPL's work shifted away from public policy to be more design driven? Does anyone want to take that? No pressure.
I can, if that's wise. Okay, so a few things in there. The first thing I would say is that like PPL has always been a design-driven organization. We use human-centered design methods in all of the work that we do. And we would argue that human-centered design methods can be used in a policymaking process. So it's not a traditional policymaking cycle as one would sort of learn in an MPA program or something. But it's our belief that if things are made to be functional with humans, you can create them with humans. So what that means for us, though, is that I'm sorry I don't have this slide in our deck, otherwise I would show it to you, but we talk about big P policy to little p policy. So big P policy is about legislation. It's about laws or legal requirements that are created by legislative bodies before they're kicked over to executive bodies here in the United States system to actually implement those policies. Past that, or sort of downstream from big P policy, we have regulatory environments, we have rules and regulations that exist at governing agency levels, we have sort of protocols and operational standards that exist at the agency level for frontline staff, and that's what we think of as like little p policy. So PPL as an organization works across that whole spectrum and influences that whole spectrum. I would say in sort of our service design work now, a lot of what we do has to do with certainly more towards the small p side. So what I mean by that is if we're creating a new program or service, or we're changing how some service functions, you actually can't do that without changing the rules for staff. You can't do it without changing the agency's expectations or what's written into contracts or what the incentives are when services are commissioned. So in the course of building tools and materials for members of the public, for frontline staff, you need to actually create operational requirements, managerial requirements, protocols for program administrators, and you need to give recommendations for how you need to change the regulatory environment in order to allow those new types of service interactions to happen. The other thing to say is that at this point, we don't do a lot of legislative crafting. A lot of our work, the bulk of our work tends to be with executive agencies. But that being said, it's our hope and dream to actually make an argument and to say, you could actually create legislation with constituents as well, with a whole bunch of stakeholders. So that is something that PPL would very much like to do. But what you will see around here is that we don't do a lot of sort of research and writing a la a think tank and how one might think of traditional policy making or policy advocacy. But we do certainly do policy creation. Does that make sense? Did that get at the questions that people were asking? Okay. Sure, Becky, if that was me, yes, sure, you're welcome.
And I see that we're getting a couple more questions about the application specifically, whether people should have received a confirmation email after submitting, and also at what point in time will people be sharing their project work or project sample?
Got it. Yes, I do believe so. If you submitted your information through the Airtable form, you should have received a confirmation. So if you did not receive a confirmation, please send an email to info@publicpolicylab.org and say, hi, I think I submitted my application. Can you please make sure that it went? But I did not receive a confirmation email. Can you please make sure that it was there? And I will go in and check for you. What was the other thing, Mia? Oh, work sample. We already, I guess we covered that already, right? So selected candidates will be asked like post interview to submit a work sample. So don't worry about it on the front end. Few minutes left.
Just scanning through the chat.
Yeah.
We have lots of people who are very on it right now answering. Let's see. I think another question that we have has to do with how much time will be spent in the field conducting ethnographic work and interviewing. And I think we can combine that also with another question that was about the way we've adapted to remote work, especially when you're working directly with users. So if anyone wants to take the double whammy.
I can take the double whammy for the team. I dropped some answers in the chat, but I think it explained more fully with my voice. So with research and how much fieldwork you would actually be doing, it all depends on the project. Every project has research, that's a definite thing. And research plays a role in every stage of a project lifestyle. So it isn't just sort of discovery research and then we hand over what we know to design and we're like, see you later, okay, next research project. But actually there's exploratory research which helps us scope out the project and scope out the research plan. There is that discover research to give us the insights we need to start thinking about what could be made. But then we go on for concept testing. There's also prototype testing. Someone had a question in here about how we measure impact. We also, depending on the scope of the project again, but we also run pilots and then support our project partners with scaling their work and doing all the kind of like nitty-gritty operational discussions they need to have with their leadership to implement a project, like a program or a service at scale that we might have been working on. Measuring impact is a very hairy and tricky thing because we're dealing with so much complexity, and so it's not like we can return to a given population 3 years down the track and saying, connecting the dots, this is exactly what our project did. What we do is check in with our project partners at increments after we've delivered the project. And we also, as we're trying to hand over a project and transition from the pilot to helping our partners implement and scale a project into the sort of broader system, we also hand over, how they might be measuring impact going forward, because we know that it's a long process, and there are certain kinds of like indicators and metrics which might be more or less relevant, and methods for collecting that data. So that's something we consider when we hand projects up as well. So you'll be in the field for sure. And the question about remote work, the other part of the whammy. That was hard, especially when you're working with low-income populations who may not have stable internet access, or for whom smartphones are expensive. So we had to adapt a lot of our research approaches. We obviously shifted everything remotely. As a team, we had to change how we collaborated. We adapted with a field research guide, which sort of outlines our ethical approach and the kinds of tools and processes and protocols we use. So we had to adapt all of that to accommodate the online working as well. And I'd say coming out of that experience, it's much harder to recruit people you're not meeting face to face. So we've ended up doing a lot more, which is great, actually more projects where we have long-term participation from the same cohort of participants, which is something we've always desired anyway. So oddly, COVID enabled us to do more of that and set up more mechanisms for long-term participation. Yeah, there's a lot more I could say about remote work, given that we're still in the midst of it all, but hopefully that answers those two questions.
Should we, I think on that note, talk about this question? Thank you, Erica. I saw that you responded to Song here. Are there partnership guidelines that ensure PPL projects recommendations are adapted by government and then post-implementation follow-up? I know, Talia, you started to speak to that. Do you want to say anything more about that hairy implementation thing, like what we do post quote delivery or project completion?
Yeah, I mean, something to be aware of, I think, with the kind of work we do. The nice and fun and relatively easier part is like the research and the design work. The much more complex and demanding part, I feel, is getting things implemented. Like we're very impact focused and implementation focused. And that's where there's just so much like diplomacy and planning and micro detailing and lots of supporting our project partners, meaning our clients and agencies, to have everything they need and the awareness required to try and take on a whole bunch of new things that maybe didn't exist before or have changed how they function and implement that into a system that currently exists. And so there's a lot that comes with that. We've been finding we do a lot of capacity building, which, if we've designed something for frontline staff, we have to train someone in the agency to work out how to train their frontline staff with whatever it is that we're handing over. So that tends to be a core part of implementation support we offer. There's also helping set up a schedule of meetings usually, which might be important for our project partners to have, say with their legal team, with their comms teams, with their IT teams, things like that. So it's a tail end of a project, which is, it's always a little bit different. Like things like just getting a website up that we've made is complicated in city systems. So we're always learning and things are always changing. So it's not like we've got that down to fine art. I think it's, especially COVID changed how a lot of things work and what there was funding available for. But yeah, hopefully that answers that question as well.
Yeah, that was great. I think a really fun thing about being on this team is that I get to look around and see all my coworkers become like really wonky experts in the minutia of government systems. So like Talia is like currently doing trainings with frontline staff in the DOE and the Department of the Department of Education and the Department of Homeless Services world. People here know a lot about legacy software systems of the Department of Homeless Services. Another member of our team has become very intimately acquainted with the city's IT department and figuring out like cyber cloud reviews and all sorts of things like that. So I agree with Talia that implementation is really what we're about here. And so a thing to note is it's good if you want to work at PPL, it's good if you're interested in that sort of stuff. All right, a couple minutes left. Mia, do you have one more for us?
It seems like we've covered quite a bit. I think we've talked about the logistics of the application, timelines, partners, who works on projects. If there are any last minute lingering questions that anyone feels like we haven't answered completely, maybe we'll take one more.
Sure.
I saw there was another question about how to stay in touch with PPL outside of this specific opportunity, which is a great time to plug our newsletter and our many social media feeds. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat to our Twitter and our LinkedIn, and we also have a newsletter that is becoming more and more active. So feel free to subscribe to that as well.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Anyone going once, going twice? Anything you want to upvote? Anything else, PPL team? I'll say a thing about the application timeline to wrap us up. But everybody's good? Everyone is silence means everything is good? Okay. All right. Great. We strive to be delightfully helpful. So that's good feedback. Yes, I hope you had fun. I always have fun at these things. Definitely feel free to reach out if you have very specific detailed questions that we've not answered here, but hopefully that hits a lot of your questions and concerns. Applications, as we said, are due Friday, May 28th at 5 p.m. Someone who asked when you'll hear back from us. The hope is that we will give people some response next week, which is really fast. So please have some grace for us if we don't hit that exactly, but that is what we're shooting for. And yeah, then we will do virtual interviews, Zoom interviews with selected candidates. Folks who move on from there, we'll ask you for a work sample, and then looking to make offers the week of June 14th, excuse me, with a start date in early July. I think that's it. I was just thinking of something else to say, but I've already forgotten it. So hope this was helpful. We really like working with each other, and we love when we get to recruit and bring new people onto the team. And I actually I read all of your applications. Really a lot of our team does, not just me. And we have a lot of fun doing it. So we're looking forward to getting to know you. All right. See everybody later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Can PPL stay here for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay, great.